Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you for being here so early in the morning. In my opinion, it's a very important moment this year because we have closed a season, a year that has made us extremely proud. I think that we can make some comments on these years, starting from the end, going back to its start. So certainly, we have some mixed sensations, mixed feelings from Berlin's match. It's clear that when we play a Champions League final, well, obviously, we play that final in order to win it, just like any match played by Juventus. We always play to win matches. And if I think of the European history, of Juventus' European history, I think that now we have restored that dimension that we were all looking for. It's true, you all have made comments about it. Today we have the highest number of lost finals, but nonetheless we got to the final, and this is something that certainly matters, that we played 8 Champions League finals, but we shouldn't get discouraged from Berlin's match because of the result that we obtained in the end. There are many other finals that, if I look back in our history, that should have ended in a different way. I'm just thinking of Manchester's final or Athens' final, or maybe München finals. Certainly those are matches that left a little bit of bitterness in our mouth, or if I think of Ajax or Berlin's match, certainly they were not so obvious, and so the result was not obvious at all. But the performance of the team in Berlin was certainly an extremely good starting point for the future, because that was a match that followed a very important progress, because at European level these years, well, certainly we played very important matches in Dortmund and the semi-final against Real Madrid that allowed us to play against Barcelona in a very straightforward manner. We certainly were scored a goal after a few minutes, and this could have killed any other team. Instead, we reacted, then we equalized, and then we played in at very high level, and we could have won it. Certainly some moments were not favorable, and then these moments allowed Barcelona to strike, to score again, and therefore I have to think about this European development, and certainly this is a very good starting point for the future, a good starting point for the future that at European level shouldn't make us think that as Milan is so close and we'll be certainly playing the final in Milan, because obviously being in the condition of playing such a match and Champions League final is certainly very hard, it's extremely hard for all clubs, and that's why the clubs playing the finals change every year. But nonetheless, I have great expectations for the future also at European level, and I hope to see a group stage that maybe will be dealt with much more awareness and on the same level of the great European clubs where we are at the moment. We hope that after the 4th, 5th day of the various rounds we'll be in the quarterfinals, and then we'll see the conditions of injured players and also a little bit of luck in the drawings, because I can remember a couple of years ago when we saw Real Madrid and Manchester United, 2 teams that had the ambition to get to the final. So from this point of view, certainly one of the 2 has to be eliminated, and of course we can't condemn it because of a drawing, a successful season, especially if the clubs have that particular ambitious goal. So please don't think just because Milan is so close to us that next year we'll will certainly play the final. That certainly will be working hard in order to get to that destination, to obtain that result. So we certainly need to consolidate our work, but we must be aware of the fact that playing on the European stage is very difficult and hard. But we won the 10th Coppa Italia in the previous day. We also won our 30th league. And so from this point of view, this has been an extremely extraordinary season. So that's why we have to be proud of what we have achieved. This year we started on the 16th of July in this conference room by introducing the new coach, Massimiliano Allegri, and I cannot but start from this in order to thank a first part of the club, that is the club that is managed by Beppe Marotta, our general manager, that he is present here with us, and then Fabio Paratici too, and also Pavel Nedved. I have to say that in those 2-3 days certainly were extremely exciting. They demonstrated their great professionalism, competence and skills, and then great calm in order to find a solution that could allow Juventus to go ahead. And Allegri finally arrived in a very cautious and prudent way at the beginning, but with his staff he was able to integrate in a perfect way in the club with a continuous dialogue with Paratici, with the general manager, with Nedved, in order to find the best way and in the shortest time possible in order to get in harmony with a very strong team that was already very strong, a team that he could actually see personally after 10 days. And from this point of view, I can only thank them and thank Massimiliano, of course, for the way he was able to integrate and for being so brave in accepting to lead Juventus in that historical moment. It was a very difficult moment that certainly at the beginning put a lot of pressure on him, but his awareness, his style, his way of being, and his ability to make the team grow further allowed him to perfectly integrate in our mechanisms and our dynamics, and the results obtained are very clear and visible to anyone. So from this point of view, we have to pay tribute. He's got great merit, of course, him with the whole technical staff. In order to obtain such a remarkable result, certainly we needed different components to be perfectly aligned and harmonized, and that's something that I want to stress all the time. So a football club always consists of three main components. On the one hand, the so-called company, then the coach with his staff, and then on the other hand there is the team. So these are three entities that at first might seem disconnected, different, but what instead I want to stress is the fact that we belong to a single unit where we are all useful but not indispensable, and that's something that I also stressed last year when I was in Milan at the Winex Festival. And we have to be aware of the fact that we're all useful but not fundamental, not indispensable. So it's the force of the group that make us strong. So only if we work as a team in a group we can really make the difference. And so it's important to understand the work that is really important, and it is the restructuring of the company in order to define a new structure in terms of staff that could bring results on the pitch and outside the pitch in order to consolidate our team and our club as a whole. And I'm talking about the real squad, the first line of the club of the company is Marotta, and Then our CEO, the Chief Executive Officer, Aldo Mazzio, that leads all the services inside the company, from human resources, finance and administration, IT and purchasing department. So from this point of view, the company is working in a really perfect way. And then we have the real estate development with all the Continenza project that we are now developing and that we hope that we'll be able to open in 2-3 years. Yes, probably 3 years is more feasible. And with this new training area, we'll be able to create this new Juventus world, while the sporting activities of the youth teams will be followed by the academies that will be concentrated in this single area with the dormitory for hosting all the young players so that they can grow and they can breathe the Juventus atmosphere every single day. Then another important person that was instrumental to the growth of the club is Francesco Calvo, the Chief Revenue Officer, who leads all the revenue activities. It is sponsorship, the stadium that is hosting us at the moment, the digital and final relationship management, and also the fact that retail and licensing, thanks to Adidas as new sponsors. Well, as licensing, an agreement has been signed with another important name, remarkable name in the sports sector, that is Aviera 46, that is Valentino Rossi's company. But not only big names make difference, of course, but the activities that Francesco and his group lead on every single day and thanks to that work, the club has been able to make a real step forward. If we think what we did in 2010, 2011, the first year I was here, and certainly we doubled our turnover in order to get to 315 million. These are not the Deloitte data, but the real ones, as they take into account all the surpluses. And if please allow me, sometimes I do not fully agree with the Deloitte interpretation, even though I do agree with their methodology. But if I considered Juventus history, well, 10 million of surpluses are basically generated every single year. So in our internal management, that type of result is something that we expect every single year, year after year. So these are the recurrent results. And on the other hand, it's true that with an excellent transfer that could lead to altered data. So we didn't move away from 15 million last year, so now we are at 315 million, and this year the results will be published in September. At the moment, as we are listed in the stock exchange, of course, I can only talk about the forward-looking statement that is issued at the end of each board. But we reached these 315 million of turnover, and this is certainly a result that put us in the condition to face the great European powers on the pitch. And from this point of view, our general manager capacity is to manage this fire capacity, that is the capacity to manage all the different elements, and a sum that is around 200 million, a certain remarkable amount that puts us in the condition to compete with the great European champions. And the results we obtained on the pitch clearly demonstrated. So I've just talked about the current season, but we have obtained many results in Europa League and Champions League. And I would like to stress one more time that a season has to be considered successful if we are competitive at all levels. So we can't think that in terms of management, we consider a successful season just calculating the numbers of cups that we are able to win. Of course, we wanted to win each single competition we take part in. Of course, this is part of our DNA, and we can't change it. So all the players on the pitch, of course, are the first ones who want to win at every single match they play, and this is part of our DNA, of course. So we wanted to win all the competitions, all the tournaments that we participate in, but when we have to judge the work of the people working for Juventus, of course, we have to make different assessments. So from a sporting point of view, we have to be competitive and spring it in every competition. But then as far as Francesco is concerned, of course, it's important to reach the goals that we set in our business plan and that are revised year after year. So from this point of view, we have done an excellent and outstanding job with the agreement signed with Adidas 18 months ago, and also the renewal of Jeep sponsorship, and these are the two main items that I would like to stress. But recently we also signed an agreement in Mexico for a regional agreement, more or less following the example of Manchester United, that has something like 20 million revenues a year from this type of activities, or with the sport activities that started in different countries. But now we wanted to be more disciplined and approaching this type of agreements, regional agreements around the world, in different parts of the world. So obviously these type of agreements can work better in some countries if we have players from those countries in our team too, but obviously we have to diversify according to the different activities that we develop. So from this point of view, again, to make an analogy with the world of football, the presidents, the general manager, the coach, and some of the symbol players are usually recognized as the icons. But personally, well, of course, I would like to thank you for your compliments and congratulations, because I do represent Juventus. But when we won the league, the Italian league again, of course, I was very happy to hear these congratulations. But I feel really privileged in leading a group of leaders, all professionals in their own sectors. So I can assure you that in Juventus, all levels are extremely professional, with great competence, with all skilled people. And that's why I would like to thank all the people working at Juventus that allowed us to reach the results that we have obtained so far, with the awareness that now we're closing the season. Actually, we closed it yesterday, and since yesterday we started working in order to obtain similar results next year and the future years. And for example, I was talking to some of the people working at Juventus before the semi-final with Real Madrid, and I was also talking to the players when we met them for the premiums linked with the Champions League. My timeline was already set in order to guarantee continuity between past, present and future, without just focusing on the results of the year, of the season, because my main concern is to guarantee the growth, the constant growth of Juventus and the competitiveness of the team in the different competitions it participates in. And then I would like to close by making reference to something that I also think is very important, that is football policies, basically considering the international aspects compared to the national aspects. Well, this year is the fourth year for me as Councillor of the European Club Association that is chaired by Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, and I, of course, I'm in this association with many different teams, and we share the common goal of developing football, being aware of the fact that the issues that we can find in Italy, France, Germany are different from other countries like the Netherlands, Belgium or Portugal, or maybe the other levels in other countries. So of course these are very different situations, and I've started understanding and appreciating the meaning of competitions also in the various qualification rounds, 1, 2, 3, and then the playoff playoffs in August that we are most used to, but there are some countries and some teams that deserve great attention because their competitions very often start and finish before getting to the main public on the big stage. But what has really surprised me of the ECA is this great attention, the great focus they put on the development of football at every single level. For example, recently I attended a conference in Warsaw the day before the Coppa Italia final, where we met in the Juventus Stadium to share and discuss the various governance issues at national levels with different examples and testimonies. And this clearly demonstrates how these associations want to develop football at all levels in the different countries, and different from the typical activities of the institutions. Well, the relationship with UEFA is absolutely excellent, and I'm part of the club competition committee, and this is an experience that is really enriching me also in the definition of the various dynamics of international competition. So the clubs competition committee basically developing Champions League and Europa League and finding the right balance between these two important competition. A balance that at the moment is certainly very important because the Champions League represents excellence and it also represents the great financial excellence, while Europa League has a different goal, and therefore it's difficult to find the right balance between these two tournaments, these two competitions, and certainly to generate some problems, even though we're all very interested in it, because we know very well the big difference in focusing on the Champions League and considering the best ranking teams and those that would like to take part in Europa League with some financial problems if certain elements are not present. Well, UEFA, that is managed by Platini, and by Infantino, and this just to stress again the importance of developing football, that is the collaboration between league and federation, so Lega for UEFA, and then the association represents the clubs for the federation. And I, as Tomasi pointed out, and I would like to point it out as well, that the federation should have a sporting vision and then having people that are able to develop the different issues linked with the daily management. So at football, or principle that considers players and football as a whole. And this happens inside UEFA. Rummenigge, in my opinion, represents an exception because now he's been sitting on the other side of the desk for 25 years, so he's certainly a very qualified manager, and he can certainly perfectly understand the different issues and problems of the clubs. Therefore, the clubs associations should be managed by the entrepreneurs, while institutional associations, in my opinion, should be better managed by the players that know very well the values and the principles at the basis of football as a sport. And I would like to stress this because our dimension as a European dimension, my personal involvement, but also the involvement of some of my collaborators that are part of different ECA's commissions, allow us to deal with extremely professional situations. And if Italy wants to become again extremely competitive at international level, we have to fully understand the current football problems and issues, because Champions League, Juventus final, and Napoli and other finals and the other competitions are the good results of teams that could play well on the pitch. Is not thanks to the Italian system that Juventus, Napoli and Fiorentina got to this point. Basically, these are clubs that managed this season, this year, very well, and so this allowed us to improve our ranking. We have definitely grown, and now we rank 14th, and Napoli now is the second team at European level, and this means that continuity in this international development will allow allow these clubs to grow independently. We know very well the problems that we have here in Italy, and the very first problem are the various sporting facilities. Now we are in a sporting facility that certainly ranks, is one of the top at European level, but as to the other stadiums, as to the other sporting facilities, we know very well the problems that we have, and of course we have to make an effort, if not to build new stadiums, but at least to restructure the existing ones, because we can't really look appealing and attractive to top players and great champions with the current stadiums also, in terms of security, considering what has recently happened. We have invested, and we have also agreed inside the Liga to invest on the online technology, whether it is right or wrong, but anyway, we had a unanimous vote, and the investment for every single club is around 400,000 euros, and inside this stadium, and we also wrote it, and then we demonstrate it with on our website, this type of cameras that continuously record what happens inside the stadium. So basically whatever happens inside the stadium is recorded with different optical views, but basically we always have an overview of what's going on inside the stadium, and these type of cameras cost 180,000 euros, basically half of the technology for the golden technology. Why I'm saying this? Because we're still discussing what happened during our derby match, whether a rocket was thrown and why it was admitted to the stadium. So inside the Lega we found the resources to solve a couple of cases of goal. There were no goals, and certainly this will be important. It's always important to understand whether the goal was scored or not inside the goal or not, but basically if with half of that money we can also guarantee security and certainty for the police to enforce the law and take action, what certainly is a very important priority that we have to take into account. And then I would like to conclude by saying that I am extremely proud of the work that we have carried out over the last few years, and in particular this year has been an extraordinary season. Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. President. Abdelmajid, B-Sports. Two questions. The first concerning the new purchases. So there are great expectations on the new purchases. And the second question is, what has Juventus prepared in terms of strategy in the Arab world in order to consolidate and strengthen its image? Because we know that there are a lot of Juventus supporters in the Arab world, and Barcelona, Real Madrid too, but Juventus probably should consolidate, further strengthen its image in this world. Well, as to the first question, probably I forgot in my introduction that, as usual, as to the new purchases, I think that you will have a lot of time over the next 90 days, so you will follow Mr. Marotta on a daily basis, and that's something that is linked to him. So as far as me is concerned, I can only stress the great trust that I have in Mr. Marotta and his collaborators, and I'm sure they will be able to make the best choices in order to carry on with our growth in the sport sector. So I definitely trust Mr. Marotta and his collaborators from this point of view. As to the activities in the Arab world, well, I can tell you that we have limited activities. We started with a prioritization principle, and even though we know that we are a global brand, we can't just face the whole world in a single day. So from this point of view, we have now set the priority on North America and China too, and also tactical priority has been set in order to develop develop our brand in Japan, and then most of our activities are concentrated on Europe and on the distribution of merchandising and the brand, and most of the activities in the Arab world will be then mainly developed by our digital devices that allows us to instantly communicate with all supporters around the world. As to the various sales, marketing activities, as I told you, we have to make priorities, to set priorities, and we have to be aware that we need to penetrate the market and we need to sow the seeds before being able to reap the fruits without wasting energies. And even though we are a very big company, we have both human and financial resources that are currently limited. That's why we have to use our investments in a very sensible way, being aware of the fact that the great love and affection of our supporters is the same everywhere in the world. President, good morning, Alex Tacchini Quartaredo. Well, first of all, congratulations for your work and thank you for the great pride that you have shared with us. So considering what you've just mentioned and what my colleague has just pointed out, are there any international groups that is currently searching for you, courting you? So do you think it would be advisable maybe to open the company in order to further increase the power of the club? Well, at the moment, we're not searching for this type of situation. Well, I actually have to say this as a representative of Exor, and anyway, you have to ask them this question. As I'm in the board of Exor, I can nonetheless give you a very simple answer to this question, but at the moment as Exor, we're not actually searching for this type of collaborations, and this also allows me to remind you of the work that we have carried out so far with the great support of my cousin Yaki that has allowed us over the last few years as a share, apart from the fact that it's a shareholder, of course, but has allowed us to develop our growth with very important investments, with great trust in the results we could obtain, the results that currently allow us to make a further step in quality in order to look for the 5th or 6th ranking in Europe. And so thanks to that support and the trust, we've been able to work very well. But as far as your question is concerned, my answer is no, and we actually don't need it. Good morning, Mr. President. Francesco Scosati, Sport 24. So, as a supporter, I would like to ask you if after 2 days from the champion you got more pride or maybe disappointment because of the results, and then thinking of the final, from this point of view, you can maybe consider it as a cycle that concludes after 4th leagues, Italian leagues won, also considering a possible renewal of the future teams and the fact that maybe some big champions might leave Juventus, or also some important top players might leave Juventus. So do you think that it's the end of a cycle, maybe the beginning of a new Juventus? Well, as far as supporters are concerned, and me as a supporter, of course, on the one hand, there is disappointment because, as I told you before, Juventus plays a single match to win it, and we played the final in Berlin in order to win it, and the team reacted, they equalized on the pitch, they played 20 minutes of exciting football, and we played this match with the best players, and we could have won it. And of course, this is a great source of pride. Of course, I'm not happy with the fact we lost the match, but I'm also proud. And as to the future, I have to stop here considering facts. And of course, we have to ask the general manager. But when I think of Morata, Pereira, and Dybala, and many other players, there are many players that are currently growing and developing, and they can definitely represent Juve in the future. Well, certainly Morata has represented us in a Champions League. He made a difference because he scored in the semi-final, he scored in the final, and in the quarter-finals he also got a penalty for us, and that therefore, these are the players that can really ensure the continuity of in terms of performance year after year. And again, this is linked with our goals, because we want to be competitive in spring, and if we are competitive in spring already, of course, we can get important results. Good morning, Caselle, MF Dow Jones.
Senta, io sono curioso di avere non fare una domanda, ma di avere da lei un commento su.
I would like to hear comments on a couple of numbers, because now you're capitalizing 300 million euros and Milan has 1 billion, over 1 billion. So maybe listings on the stock exchange, in your opinion, still make sense or not? So what do you think about it? Maybe you should go somewhere else in the world. Well, again, this is a question that you should ask Exor, because I cannot answer such a question. So what I would like to read in the newspapers, well, of course I understand. Well, I would like to hear a real comment. Well, apart from the fact that Fininvest recently declared that they opened a formal dialogue, so there are not any figures mentioned yet. And very often when we read something, what we read does not necessarily correspond to reality. But anyway, these are certainly exceptional figures, but when we have to consider the multiples and we consider the net results and the gross operating margin and the net financial position of Milan, then I find it difficult to understand that number. Certainly there are intangible values, the brand value to start with, but well, probably I should ask a question to you. So how these figures, because you just gave me the PFN and the net result of a club, so how could these figures lead to that type of value? So maybe I should ask this question. Francesco Marino Rai. You said that the results in Europe of Juventus, Napoli and Fiorentina represent the success of these three clubs and not of the Italian football system. So what does the system lack? Because probably what do you think should be integrated in the system in order to improve it? And then the next question, do you think you will lead Juventus as president in the future? Well, what is lacking? Well, I already mentioned it before. Well, first of all, the sporting facility are the great missing ones, and then secondly, I would like to find a real sport project developed by the federation with real missions concerning professional football, because we talk about the reform of the championships and the various leagues, but to what extent, what is the price that we have to pay in order to reduce the number of clubs, and what kind of support we need to increase instead. But if we analyze Lega Pro, for example, the average turnover is around 1 million, maybe more or less, with an average cost of 2.5 million. So basically have a Lega Pro which is currently on a loss. So we always invest, so that various teams invest in order to be upgraded, in order to get results. But once again, what is the role of Lega Pro inside the football system here in Italy? What's the role of the second league and major league inside our system? So we should understand this, because it's not so clear. Then, of course, we might also consider the technical sector. What about the projects that have been currently developed by the technical sector? So there is not so much. So that's why we need to develop a 360 degrees analysis with an approach on the clubs, not only with with the support of a public institution, but with the public institution supports like the Lega Calcio. And so these are the kind of analysis that have to be carried out. Instead, we always talk about the fact that we need what we need to obtain in order to get a favorable vote for promoting and implementing such a reform. Well, I've already pointed out that the second Italian leagues and the lower league developed a real strategic business plan to the development of the football system, well, we should understand how much the major league actually wants to invest or has to pay maybe, or basically we have to talk about investments, because the major league should be willing to invest maybe more than what we do at the moment, but nonetheless it's something that we have to try and understand. So we have to make these real investments, and as a real investment, of course, we need a return on the investment, and the return is based on a specific sporting project. And then of course Mr. Manotto can maybe tell you better than me how the lower league and the Lega Pro were developing the various teams and the various players. But as far as I know, there is a complete lacking overall vision and the awareness of the fact that if the Italian football wants to be at the top, at top level, at worldwide, well, certainly we need at least 5-10 years in the future in order to improve, because no one has the magic wand to make miracles. So certainly we need sharing with the various stakeholders in the football world, with the different leagues, the different clubs and the players, the referees and the coaches, and to better understand what we want to do and how to do it and how to get out of this situation. There might be different systems as it happened in Spain and Portugal, but certainly we need a medium, long-term view, and then we must be disciplined enough in order to implement this. Well, my question as president, well, I feel very well where I am at the moment, so I don't see any changes in the short term. But of course, it depends what you mean in terms of timeline. I'm very happy right now where I am, and we have this to ensure great continuity to the sporting project. We have great challenges to deal with at marketing level, at international level, that are extremely attractive also for the international policies. We have the whole Juve world to be developed. So as you can see, there are a lot of challenges that we have to welcome, and I'm extremely motivated to carry on. Guido Tuttosport, 2 questions. The first, you talked about Morata. I would like to know if he could represent the future of Juventus, also considering the fact that Real Madrid has sort of right on him. And the second question is, if you want to put a symbol on the jersey for the 10th Coppa Italia, well, I'll try to better explain. So please, as to the purchases and new purchases, you have to ask Mr. Marotta, because I can maybe stress it again. So Morata is the present of Juventus, but about the future squad, the future team, you have to ask Mr. Marotta. And once again, I want to stress the fact that I fully trust him. As to Coppa Italia, no, we're not going to add any symbol on the T-shirt. Roberto Perrone, Corriere della Sera. I would like to ask, in 2011, probably the darkest season of the millennium was concluded. But nonetheless, you had started with your reconstruction, and 4 years later, that time you ranked 7th, and now you're first in Italy. You played the Champions League final, so the deficit, the gap that at that time seemed not to be, could not be breached with the other Italian teams, instead has been filled, and now you have certainly made tremendous progress. So what can you give us your comments about the rivals, the other opponents of Juventus? It seems that there are no rivals here in Italy. As to Europe, instead, I would like to hear your judgment, your opinion on what happened at FIFA, also linked with what you said before, the fact that the institutions, the sporting institutions, should be managed by players, former players. So do you think that this could be applied also to international federations, in your opinion? Well, in Italy, I would like to speak about Juventus and not about the others. I think it's more advisable. But if I remember one of the first interviews I released in December 2010, and the last question I was asked, and that season was quite normal. So we were trying to understand how to proceed in the Champions qualifications and so on and so forth. And I was asked, if you don't manage to get to obtain the results and to meet your expectations, well, obviously, my answer was I have no regrets, because I know I did my best, and that's what we have to do, to carry on and doing our best. What has resulted from my entry here at Juventus is great job culture, because at Juventus everyone, and I would like to stress everyone, really works a lot in every single department, in the different areas, in the sports sector, in the revenue sector, in the service sector. So everyone works extremely hard at Juventus. So we defined clearly the path, and we clearly set the goals to be pursued, and these goals have been achieved, because over the last 4 years at Spring, we have always been extremely competitive. We lost a semi-final, and basically every year we increased revenue, increased the operating margin and the net results. We had some 100,000 surplus in terms of tax surpluses. So this was the result of great work by all the people at Juventus. And of course I am concerned about Juventus only, not about what happens outside Juventus. Of course, I must understand what happens outside Juventus, but I can only make comments about Juventus. As far as FIFA is concerned, I can tell you that now is really premature. It's too early to make any comments on the extent, on the repercussions and impact of these events. Basically, every day something new arises. And therefore, the assessment will have to be made in some months in order to have a clear picture of what's going on and what is arising in the International Federation. Well, certainly we can say that this does not give a great image of football. Massimiliano Rozzi, La Stampa. So over the last few months you have met Tavecchio, both in Rome and also here, and he used different words, for example, the tribunal, refund, and the League of 2006. So what about the state of the art? So are there any issues that could be negotiated or not, to quote what he said, and what do you think about this after 4 years? Well, basically, I don't think it doesn't make any sense to talk about it. My position is the same that I expressed in the past. Good morning, Gabriella Monica, DF Dow Jones. Well, my first question was about the sentence comments, but you just mentioned it. So there are still no decisions made by the court. So as to this great revenue from the final champions, how much in terms of percentage will have an impact on the debt, and how much will be invested in the purchases, in the new purchases? Well, the situation of our debt is currently absolutely sustainable as far as our economy and financial position is concerned. Certainly this is an indicator that we are carefully monitoring, because so far it's sustainable, and of course we have to prevent making this debt grow in the future. So of course whatever we do is focused on the sports results, because if we don't obtain sports results, then of course we can't grow also in the other sectors. So of course there is great attention, great focus on the sports result, but with a great awareness that we also have financial indicators that will have to be monitored in a very careful way. Manuele Cavaliere, La Repubblica. Another question similar to Roberto Perrone's. You don't want to talk about the other competitors or rivals. Do you feel isolated in the Italian football? And so do you think there is really this type of isolation because you have different principles and values? What do you mean by isolated? Well, in the sense that you are very far separated from the other teams in the major Italian league from a financial and political point of view. Well, I can also answer De Marino's question again. So it depends on the projects and the plans of the Italian football. Well, from this point of view, I don't feel really isolated, because of course we play matches and you are the first ones to comment and point out that the main example of Italian football now is Empoli, and for example we lost some scores in Genoa and against Parma, so we wouldn't have Napoli and Fiorentina in semi-final of Europa League. So the sporting culture is certainly very strong here in Italy, and winning the Italian league is extremely very hard every single year. So from this point of view, I don't feel isolated. We have made 87 points this year. So of course, we should get worried if we win the major league with 68, 70 points. But from this point of view, instead, we have done very well. But if we consider the global view, I don't really feel isolated from all the others, but I rather say that I maybe feel not capable of really affecting, really influencing the sporting policies. I will try to do my best in order to promote our ideas, not my ideas, but our ideas on the structure, on what we think football should be managed, and not always these ideas are shared by everyone. And as a result, we'll go straight following our path, trying to do our best and in the system where we work, because we work at national and international level. Good morning, President. Mirko Graziano, Gazzetta dello Sport. You talked about Fiorentina, Napoli and Juventus that have been able to really bring Italy to the top levels. I would like to know from you, what about the sign of the Italian clubs and making the Italian football system grow and develop also from a political point of view? You mean the companies, the clubs with the foreign capital? So what kind of impact do they have on the Italian football system? Well, of course, the rivalry on the pitch with Rome is very strong, and it's always been an historical rivalry. So when we play against each other on the pitch, of course, we want to prevail over each other, but I am extremely in line with them as to the development of the Italian football as a whole. And a similar example could be with Toir. He's got the experience of the American sports that have a closed system compared to ours, but the vision, the approach concerning the Italian football, well, I would say that I'm quite in line with Eric Toir as well. And of course, it's difficult sometimes to put across this type of concept with the Italian capital instead. Maybe I'm more interested in 1-2 millions more nowadays instead of 1-2 millions less now, but 10 millions more in the future. Well, this is a very simple example, but just to make you understand how it works. And so from this point of view, we'll well, try to promote our ideas, hoping that in the future we'll be able to convince the majority that a better Italian football can exist, and for this reason we can be ambitious enough to rank first in the world. And we now rank fourth in the world if compared to other aspects of the Italian economy, but we were first in the past and now we rank fourth, and by tradition Italy should aim to rank first in this particular sector. Good morning, Sabattini, calciomercato.com. So this is the final press conference, and you also mentioned figures and in a very tangible way. So this is a very hypothetical question. Have you ever wondered throughout this year what kind of results you could have obtained, and what differences could have arisen if on the 15th, 16th of July nothing could have happened? Well, with if and but, nothing really happens. So basically we have to take stock of the situation and understand and make assessments as a result of the real situation following facts. So basically just reasoning by considering hypotheses doesn't bring any added value at all.
Grazie.
Thank you very much.